Raymond Pouliot. She's going poo-poo, poo-poo, touche. It's such a popular man.
Well, I'll tell you another funny story about Raymond Pouliot, because in fact he's an Auvergnat, and they say that the Auvergnat region of France is where people are very, very careful with their money. And Raymond Pouliot, when he used to pay for his fuel at the gas station, he would only write it for 50 francs, and people never cashed the check because they wanted his signature. Anyway, he's still as famous today as he was all those years ago when he was the great rival to Jacques Anquetil, and what a rivalry that was. Now we're down to 3 leaders now. Gugère, well, he was the youngest rider in the breakaway group at just 24 years of age, and we're now down to 3. On the front, it's Schillinger, followed by Irizar, then in the third. Well, it's Schillinger at the back, sorry. For the front is Nason, the Belgian rider, participating in his first Tour de France. And now just dropping onto the front is Markel Irizar, the rider from the Basque Country, riding for the Trek Segafredo squad. This is one of the far extremities of the lake we were talking about before. This is the small lake of Royeras. As I mentioned just a little earlier, there's a huge reservoir of water in this area in the Limousin, including that great lake, the Lac Limousin. But there was also a lot of resistance in this part of the war as well. In 1944, the soldiers of the SS rounded up around about 3,000 men in this area. And it really was the heart of the French resistance.
So they did this yesterday. They were the strong team. They didn't get it quite right at the finish. We'll see what happens this time. Little flick of the elbow. Time for Vermont to come through and take up the pacemaking. 18 seconds. Slipped away just a little bit here. There's Aston on the left. Movistar in the middle. Of course, they're the team of Quintana. But this sort of finish, somebody like Alejandro Valverde could deliver a sprint blow. Very strong on these types of finish up to the line. They hit the bottom of the climb about 500 meters out.
Yeah, but look over to the right-hand side, the red and white jerseys, Lotto Soudal, they've still got a full complement of their leader. And poor old Thomas Voeckler, that's him bobbing about at the back there. Got the red number, 179, the most aggressive rider of yesterday. A little bit of discussion about that, but his job is done. He's just going to cruise in at the back end of the main field. In the white jersey, just hovering around in the middle of that fork at the front, is our man Andre Greipel.
So the team are now sorting out their sprinters. Katusha, it seems to me today Katusha are going to give it another go for Alexander Kristoff. They feel as though he may have sorted out all of his problems, driven on. The trouble is, you're born in the month of July and you're a world-class cyclist. You never get to celebrate with your family and your children because you're usually on the Tour de France. It used to happen on an annual basis to Miguel Indurain, who won the Tour de France 5 times straight. Well, another town that loves the Tour, the Le Puy de someone. I missed it, actually.
Le Puy Neige. Well, it's certainly not snowing today. Thomas Voeckler, job done today at the back of the group, but he has laid down the foundations for his team, Direct Energy, to come to the front later on. And I think what's important so far is, Phil, none of the teams that have got these lead-out trains have burned out their lead-out train. They're still pretty much in full complement, so as we get closer to the finish. And what's interesting about the fact that once we turned around to the right a little bit late, about 5 kilometers ago, we started to pick up mainly a tailwind, so it's going to be a very, very fast approach to the finish line here in Liège, in Limoges.
I hope we're not in Liège. That's a different country, never mind a different town, but even so, we're under 10 kilometers to go now. As the leader here is Irizar, just for the moment. All three still try to help one another. The common enemy is about to pass under 10 kilometers to go as well. Just over 6 miles, remember. And it's Astana taking a real part in the finish today. Their man for the future, the long term, is Aru, but Vincenzo Nibali is here. Nibali, when he won the Tour a couple of years ago, got off to a great start on the second day when he won an uphill climb in the city of Sheffield in the UK. If he produces that form, then there'll be no sprinters with him.
Oh, now watch out. Dodgy little corner here as we start to get closer to the outskirts of Limoges. The breakaway group is around there nice and safely, but look at the the smoothness that the main field are negotiating these corners now. These are the moments when you've got to stay at the front end of the peloton. If you dream about touching your brakes at a moment like this, you'll slip back 15, 20 places in the main field, and then you'll have to use a fair amount of energy to move back up towards the front end of the peloton, and it's those little bits of acceleration that deaden your sprint towards the end. Cavendish, he's hovering around there in the green jersey and never far away from him. He's so happy with direction data because he's got his lead-out train, his dream lead-out train back together. Bernie Eisel from Austria, he's got Mark Renshaw, and then of course himself. And over the years, Mark Renshaw, the Australian, has been so instrumental in all of these victories that Mark Cavendish has racked up.
Racing to the town here of Le Palais-sur-Vienne, as we're inside 10 kilometres now to the finishing line. Looks as the Lotto boys were looking around to make sure they hadn't got rid of their leader there, Andre Greipel, but he was tucked right in, and Cavendish paying a lot of attention, making space for himself now. These next few kilometres are the hazardous moments for the sprinters in the Tour de France.
They've got to be very careful now, Phil, as we start to look at that 10 kilometre to go banner, because inside of the last 10 kilometres, and it's one of those things when you look at the race route like this, there's a non-categorised little climb towards the finish. It only goes up 400 or 500 metres, but sometimes it can catch the sprinters unawares, and they know how important it is at this stage of the game now to hold their position in the line.
Well, they're racing about 3 miles an hour quicker, the peloton, so they should be shutting this down any minute now as we cross over the Vienne again here. The gap is down just 7 seconds. It's rather like counting for takeoff now as these boys close in. Katusha are willing to work. It means they've got faith in Christoph. It's goodbye now to Irizar's dropped off on the right. I think it was. No, it's not. It is Schillinger who's dropped off. This is Nason on the front, followed by Irizar.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that, Phil, but that really is prolonging the agony. This is the little incline I was telling you about, and as a sprinter, you've just got to hold on here, hold on to the position. You'll concentrate on the wheel of your lead-out man in front of you and hope that you go over the top of this climb without losing too many positions in the line. That is Irizar there in second position, all over his machine. If they look back now, they could probably see the breath of the men in the main field, and now all of a sudden it's Lotto Soudal have said, okay, now's the time to take control, and you see this little incline, the damage it's doing at the back.
And it's Adam Hansen, the Queenslander. That's his job to start the ball rolling for the Lotto boys. There he is on the right of our picture, checking who's coming alongside him. And it looks to me as though Orica have got a keen interest here now for Michael Matthews as well. Not surprised by that. Contador is dancing over on the far left in that orange or yellowish jersey there. These are the two leaders. We're coming together, and we're coming together with about 7 kilometres to go.
Well, the overall contenders now are mixing it up with the sprinters. You've got the black and blue jerseys on the right-hand side. That's the riders of Team Sky looking after Froome. The AG2R rider in there, Romain Bardet. He's quite happy to be hovering around there. You know, Romain Bardet and Warren Barguil, the two young Frenchmen, they've been very attentive over these early stages. They've been finishing in the top 15. I think maybe a little bit of youthful enthusiasm, but still, they're paying attention and not losing any time.
Now, let's take a look at it. On the right is Team Sky. They're looking after Froome, trying to keep him safe. On the left of the picture, we've got Contador's team with the yellow jersey of Sagan right in our picture now in the centre. He wants to win while they're trying to keep Contador safe as well. The Movistar team, dead centre dark blue, are looking after Nero Quintana, trying to keep him clean as well. As we've just slipped to the back, this is Irizar now, straight through and out.
Oh, talk about bad luck, Phil. They've been in the breakaway, and he's actually now got himself a flat tyre with 6 kilometres to go. That is unlucky.
It's very unlucky because he'll cost time, not that he's too worried about time. Limoges loves Le Tour. We know that. This is the 15th time we have been here. We've had the Grand Depart here on at least once occasion. There is the flat tyre. Another $120 down the pan. 6 kilometres to go. The teams are organised. There's a mixture once again of teams for the overall, wanting to stay out of trouble, teams of the sprinters wanting to get in there, mix it and win the day. Marcel Seberg trying to pull for Lotto Soudal as they race down before they kick up towards the finish. We're still 2 kilometres to go. Seberg playing his part now. Hansen's done his and dropped away as they try to leave the last man standing in white, Andre Greipel.
This is Marcel Seberg now on the front. He knocks in at around about 6'6". He's a big, powerful man. Looks over his shoulder. They really got it lined up. Fourth position there in that line of riders is Andre Greipel. He's now up into a third position.
Seberg has now done his bit. He's gone off. Sagan is such a perfect rider when he comes to position. He's in the leader's yellow jersey. If he were to win, of course, he would get a time bonus and increase his overall lead going into tomorrow. That's not his main aim. His main aim is to win the stage today. They made that road look flat.
Well, they certainly did. Everybody else are coming in. They'll be given all of the same time. So the men trying to win this race overall, they will finish at the peloton. You've got a couple of riders. Let's have a look at this one more time. Brian Coquard, the slightly built Frenchman, putting his shoulder there up against the bigger man on the left-hand side. And it's that throw to the line. Well, from this angle, you cannot see a difference between the two of them. Let's have a look from the helicopter.
Well, I just don't know. It's shades of deja vu from yesterday. Coquard coming on the left here, and Kittel obviously fading a little bit. Sagan and Christophe out of it. Coquard, the little Frenchman, coming up close. Where is the line? Kittel's wishing it had come right now. A clash of shoulders. That's just effort. Oh dear, I still don't know.
No,
Let's try this one. You know. Well, it's the black line under the wheel that counts, and I still don't know.
Well, you know, the fact of the matter is Brian Coquard is a track sprinter.
They've given it to Kittel.
It's unofficial. It says provisoire, unofficially for Kittel at the moment, but we have to go. I think, Phil, we're going to have a very long look there at the photo finish.
I think we'll probably get 75 reruns here.
Yeah.
Well, he thinks he's won.
Yeah, he does. I'm not convinced.
Marcel Kittel, 8 times a stage winner. Is it 9? We have another go. See if we can work it out this time. Coquard was coming from a long way down. This hill suited him. Kept his effort right until the end. So difficult to see. It is where the black line goes under the wheel. And we can't see the wheel, never mind the black line. Well, it is desperate because it might be shaded by well, look at that. That is official. And there it is. It is as close as it was yesterday. The Frenchman was third yesterday, and he's second today.
You win! Yeah! Yes! Congrats, man! Congrats! Yes, for you! Congrats!
Yeah. Marcel Kittel is back, suffering from depression. He's back on top, and he's now just won his 9th stage of a Tour de France.
What a battle, though, Phil, and it's that lunge for the line, and there is only centimetres, less than an inch, I would say, at the end of the day. Well, there you have it. There's confirmation of the result. It went to the photo. Marcel Kittel just getting ahead of the young Frenchman, Brian Coquard, and always present, getting himself another time bonus, by the way. Peter Sagan in third place. Dylan Groenewegen, the Dutch national champion, in fourth. Alexander Christophe is getting up there. Hey, and look at that. In 7th place, Dan McClay is making his 3rd appearance in the top 10, and Cavendish are fading a little bit down towards the end in 8th place, but don't complain. He's already won 2 stages so far out of 4. Other riders tailed off on the right-hand side there. That is Thomas de Gent. Looks like Wout Poels in the middle for Team Sky. But these riders not too concerned. It waited a while. He thought he got the, you know, as a sprinter, you've got that sense when you think you've got the win, but that was so close. He really did have to wait until the photo finish. But just watch from how far back the Frenchman goes in the black jersey there, and he disappears out of the shot. He's on the wheel there of Peter Sagan. Then all of a sudden he's biding in time. We're waiting. He's locked into the slipstream. Now the acceleration. Now the catapult on the left. And he's slowly making his way up towards what he hopes is going to be a victory. And on the line, the lunge. It's all down to that last moment there. And it was close, huh? And maybe it was the slightly longer arms that gave the victory to Marcel Kittel, because it was all about that throw to the line. That's Groenewegen on the right-hand side in the red, white and blue. And Cavendish over on the left-hand side. We get a chance here to have a quick look down there on the magnificent backdrop of the Cathedral of Saint-Etienne. Gothic architecture. Construction beginning back in 1273.
Well, there we are, the confirmation of the points competition. Peter Sagan has now taken the lead back off Mark Cavendish in the points competition, and Cavendish drops to second place. Kittel is into third, and Greipel into fourth there. It was not a good finish for Andre up that climb, indeed. No change in the King of the Mountains. It really didn't make any difference. Jesper Seiven keeps his lead, but it's much more hilly tomorrow. That's the big thing. This has been some of the best sprinting I think we've seen in the Tour de France, and I couldn't stand to look at the screen in those last 2 kilometres. It looked so dangerous.
It was very dangerous, very fast, and at the end of the day, as we mentioned, Phil, it was a question of biding your time, waiting for the last moment. Great chance here to look, by the way. This is the Limoges Benedictine railway station, and that's one of the major historical monuments of this region back into 1975. It was damaged during the Second World War. It was bombed by Italian planes in 1940, but today, forget about all of that history. Think about that great win by Marcel Kittel. And of course, I've got to say, I'm waiting now to see Brian Coquard from France get a sprint victory, because that was very, very close.
After 4 stages for the sprinters, where avoiding crashes was the objective of the yellow jersey favourites, today the race meets its first serious climbs. Hello and welcome to stage 5 of the Tour de France. This is Matthew Keenan with you, and it's the city of Limoges, where Marcel Kittel won yesterday, that hosts the start of today's stage as we head down towards the Cantal. Another long stage as the race enters its first serious climbs. As they bid farewell to Limoges and make their way to La Lorraine, it's a 216-kilometre torture test, with the Category 4 climb early, and then it is littered with climbs towards the end, and the first of our Category 2 climbs. It's not a mountaintop finish, but it's not far off it. It was a day of celebration yesterday in Limoges for Marcel Kittel. This afternoon, as the race got underway, the peloton was celebrating the fact that the sun was out. These are the best weather conditions that we've had so far in this year's race. Forecast for the low 20s, around about 21, 22 degrees, the expected top. The flag dropping at kilometre 0, an attack early, and this time from the Fortunato Vital concept team, which are regulars to try and go on the move. But it was all brought back together by the first climb, and it was Jesper Stuyven out to try and defend his lead, who collected the 1 point on offer. The smallest climb of the day, a Category 1 climb. Break of 9 formed not too long after that, and the break of 9 have now split, 3 going clear with 6 chasers. This is Andre Grivko in the turquoise colours of Astana. Thomas de Gent now goes through in the red and black of Lotto Soudal, and in the red and black, but on the white bike from BMC, is Greg van Avermaet. They made their way through Memac for the feed zone, and they've amped the pace ever since that point on, and that's where these 3 riders have gone clear. They're 9 minutes and 45 seconds ahead of the peloton, but their chasers are still within 1 minute behind them. Yet to get any footage of as to what is happening directly behind them, and to see whether that chase is organised. In amongst the chasing group, Rafael Micah is there, who's won 3 stages, all of them in the mountains, in his 2 appearances at the Tour de France. Here are the chasers. This is Cyril Gute at the back of the group from AG Tour Le Mondial. A teammate of one of the stage favourites today, one of the local heroes, Romain Bardet, AG Tour Le Mondial, with a clear plan. Food on board, the instructions taken. Roman Sikar is also in that group for Direct Energy. Bartosz Husowski is there for Bora Argon 18. Serge Pauls for Team Dimension Data. Rafael Micah for the Tinkoff squad. And rounding out that group of chasers, Florian Vachon from Fortuneo Vital Concept. Some beautiful forested areas throughout today's stage that we'll get a chance to take a look at. And this is just one prime example. The Department of Huez that they're making their way through. We spoke to a few of the journalists before the stage got underway, and we spoke to Raymond Poulador, who has been a 14-time rider in the Tour de France. Here they are on their thoughts as to what might or could happen today.
It's a stage that can break your legs. There's no flat roads. I don't see Froome, Quintana, Pinot, Bardet going on the attack. I think they'll mark each other. There won't be gaps between the favourites.
The fight for the yellow jersey, yeah, we could already see a Froome or Thibaut Pinot or Fabio Aru in the yellow jersey today, because they're all so close there on the GC. It depends if they can dislodge Peter Sagan, and we're going to see Alberto Contador trying to fight back in there to match Froome, Pinot, and Aru and get that GC time back.
It's the first rendezvous for the cyclists at the 103rd Tour de France. Peter Sagan can climb this terrain if the scenario of the race suits him. We can't say 100% that Peter Sagan will lose the jersey today. In fact, on the contrary, he could have the yellow jersey today.
So they're the thoughts of some of the people following the race as to what to expect today. And one of the main talking topics in the lead up to today's stage has been the condition of Contador. Coming into the race, before things got underway on stage 1, it was pretty clear he was a genuine contender. But with that crash that he had on stage 1, you can't help but think sleep wouldn't have been good for the past few nights. He conceded a few seconds on stage 2 after yet another crash. And we'll learn a little bit more about Alberto Contador today, because this is a difficult stage. And Raymond Poulador, who was speaking there at the start, a man who rode the Tour 14 times, finished on the podium 8 times, but never once wore the yellow jersey, not for a single day. He thinks that this is a pretty tough stage. This is Ian Stannard on the front for Team Sky, which will come as some relief to the riders from Tinkoff that Sky are already taking charge of the race. And the protection of the yellow jersey of Peter Sagan. Can he possibly hold on with the amount of climbing that they've got today? If it was any normal rider for the Flatland Spring Classics like Flanders or Paris-Roubaix, or a man that we talk about as winning the green jersey, you'd say no. But we're not saying no, because it's Peter Sagan. So we'll say maybe. He's always a chance, Peter Sagan. The next climb comes in around about 27 kilometres time for the leading 3 riders. So that will make it around about another 32 kilometres before the peloton gets there. And it's a Category 2 climb, the Côte de Poussey-Méry. And it's a relatively long climb. It's the longest climb that we've had so far this year, just short of 7 kilometres in length. It's a fairly gentle gradient, just on an average gradient of 4%. But the tests will begin. And there is Alberto Contador with that right arm still bandaged up. That's the side that is the most seriously injured. That was the one that he damaged on the first stage, the opening day of racing, with crash number 1 for Contador. He did the damage to the left side on the second stage, which was in the rain, so it wasn't quite as bad, as much as that can be the case when you do crash. number 91. He's got one of his teammates in the breakaway, Greg Van Avermaet, but Richie has said that he's not going to go on the attack today. This isn't one of the days where he can start to claw back the time that he lost following the puncher on stage 2. In terms of the big favourites for the overall, and Richie Porte, he is in the mix. Sure, he's a second-tier favourite, but everybody is a second-tier favourite behind Froome and Quintana. And you have to put Alberto Contador very much in that now, given the injuries that he sustained on stages 1 and 2. But Richie Porte is 1 minute and 49 seconds behind Chris Froome, Nairo Quintana, Fabio Aru, his own teammate TJ Van Garderen. Romain Bardet is also 1 minute and 49 seconds ahead of Richie Porte. So Porte's got a challenge ahead of him, but he's up to the task, I'm sure. He said that one of the things that gave him great confidence in joining the BMC team was seeing the condition that TJ Van Garderen had throughout last year's Tour de France and knowing that he'd be working with the same coach. A lot has been made of the coach at Team Sky, Tim Kerrison, former Australian swimming coach, incidentally. And going away from working with Tim Kerrison, that was one of the key things that Richie Porte had to consider, and the coaching staff at BMC, he was happy with the way they managed to get TJ Van Garderen into great shape, and that was a key element in his decision to going across to BMC. Breakaway group of 3, Grivko for the Astana squad, De Kent for Lotto Soudal, and it's Van Avermaet for BMC Racing. This is Hurtaski for the Bora Argon 18 team. Good to see this German team getting plenty of coverage at home as well. And yesterday's stage winner Marcel Kittel has played a big role in German television coming back into a live broadcast of the Tour de France. In fact, throughout the off-season, the last 2 years, Marcel Kittel and to some extent John Degenkolb have actually gone to meetings with the key executives and the big networks at German television to convince them to cover the race once again. And it's great to see that it is back on German television with their biggest public broadcaster. So that is good news. And yesterday, Marcel Kittel gave them what they were looking for. Now, the group's stuck in the middle now, drifting further out to 1 minute and 54 seconds. The peloton's at 11 minutes and 54 seconds behind. The front 3 are really thinking about their prospects of winning the stage. And the man at the front of the group, Greg Van Avermaet, is on target to collect the yellow jersey. He started the day just 18 seconds down. And he has more than a 4-minute advantage on Andrei Grivko from Astana. And he has almost a 15-minute, in fact, more than a 15-minute advantage on the other rider in the breakaway, Thomas de Gent. So Van Avermaet really is opening up the throttle to make the most of this breakaway. They're taking time on this group of 6, but it's not as if they're disorganised. They look to be working well together. Everybody's swinging through. As I say that, Huzarski is skipping a few turns of pace at the back of the group. They're about to approach the next climb of the day. They're not too far away from hitting the bottom. Around about 7 or 8 kilometres before they get to the bottom of it. Geraint Thomas finished in 15th position in this race last year, and he's got a key role to play in this race this year in support of Chris Froome to see if Froome can win the race for a 3rd time. We caught up with Geraint Thomas before the stage got underway. Here he is.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be all-out attacks at the start. You know, stage up for grabs, maybe the yellow jersey change. It's going to be certainly a hard day. First bit of heat as well. And yeah, like you say, the final is there's a lot of climbing as well. So it's certainly going to be a tough day. Maybe not like a true mountain stage, but it'll still be a big, I think a select sort of 10, 15 guys, you know, sort of. And for sure, a few late attacks from, you know, guys maybe, you know, fighting for that top 10 sort of position, so still dangerous for GC, so I think a lot can happen today.
We're not expecting any action from Chris Froome today, and in fact Froome and Quintana, I suspect on a stage like this one, they'll just be marking their rivals. And particularly given they may not be in a position to fight for the stage victory, it's going to reduce their aggression even more so. Riding for Lotto Soudal and just aiming for the stage victory. Van Avermaet is the man in the middle, and he's the best placed overall, just 18 seconds down on the yellow jersey. And Grivko at the back, a 5-time Ukrainian national time trial champion. So there's plenty of horsepower at the front. We've spoken about Thomas de Gendt a few times, actually, that we saw him doing a lot of work for Andre Greipel trying to set it up, and the conversation we had is when you get a breakaway with Thomas de Gendt, you think, fantastic, I'm in a move with Thomas. They normally work. The next moment you're thinking, it's no good being in a breakaway with Thomas de Gendt because when he gets in a move, he normally wins. But those three out in front are fairly evenly matched. If it came down to the three of them sprinting for a victory, you'd put the house on Greg Van Avermaet. But there's a lot of climbing to come before they get to the finish line in La Lorraine.
Yeah, let's remember, Greg Van Avermaet may not be a sprinter, but cast your mind back to the Omloop at Nieuwsblad at the end of February, and Greg Van Avermaet beat Peter Sagan to win the race. End of a classic, end of a tough race, slight uphill drag to the finish line. But Greg is very quick, and back in the day when we were teammates at Lotto, he used to lead out the sprint. And he's very fast.
He won the points classification at the Tour of Spain a long time ago, 2008, very early on in his career. And he won a stage of the Tour de France last year in a photo finish, slightly uphill, ahead of Peter Sagan. He's super quick. So the other two will be doing their utmost to get rid of him.
Now, looking at these beautiful pictures, Matt, of the scenery, this is the type of thing that I never really noticed when I was riding the Tour de France. It was only afterwards that I would watch some footage and then see and realise where we were. And I always thought, must be nice to go back and visit and just cruise along on the bike and then stop in. And when it gets a bit too warm, just jump in one of those lakes or jump into one of those rivers. I even thought it during the Tour de France a few times when it's really, really hot down south. You got those creeks bubbling alongside the road. And I was suffering so bad, I thought I'd just love to stop for a bit, have a dip in the water, and then just lay down on the grass, have a little nana nap, a bit of an arvo snooze. But there was always a time limit they gave me to get to the finish, so I never got to actually go and do it. But it was always so appetising, always jealous of people who were in the water when I was out there racing on a hot day.
It just looks so much more inviting. And look at this peloton. They're strung out in single file, and the first three, the leaders, are still going away from them.
And that's the reason that you don't have much time to even take a glance at the scenery around you because you're concentrating on the wheel in front of you. These guys are really moving around 50k an hour, all strung out. So no time to look at the side because if you clip a wheel, you'll end up looking like Alberto Contador at the moment, covered in bandages. Now, I'm not saying he looked around and clipped the wheel, just lost his front wheel in that right-hand corner on day one. But you pay for it for a long time. I guess on the upside, if you crash on day one of the Tour de France, by the time it finishes in Paris, there's almost nothing left of the injuries. It's hard to tell that someone's actually been injured, had skin off. It's just a little bit pink still, but pretty much healed in the space of 3 weeks.
But there's the fatigue in the process of trying to recover. It's interesting to see the different team tactics today. Fabio Aru, who's one of the dark horses, one of the outsiders for a spot on the podium at this year's race, he's got a teammate in the breakaway. That's Andre Grivko, who's in the leading three. Contador, who we've spoken about a lot, he's won the race twice. He's got a teammate in the breakaway, Rafael Majka. Team Sky have chosen a different tactic. Leave everybody surrounding Chris Froome, which for Team Sky I think is a good move. There's no point them putting a rider in the breakaway. Yesterday we saw some great team tactics by Direct Energy. I just want to go back to yesterday's stage momentarily with Brian Coquard. He said that yesterday he was very disappointed, but now he knows he can go with the very best, so he's got some confidence. But as for their team tactics, he said he knew that Sylvain Chavanel, the most experienced guy on their team, wanted to go in the breakaway because the race went through his home village and he wanted to show himself in front of his family. But Coquard in the team meeting said, no, Sylvain, I need you. So Chavanel said, okay, you need me, I believe in you, and they worked for him to try and get the win. And Chavanel did not hesitate. That was good team tactics, completely dedicated to just one man. Across at Orica Green Edge, they had a split strategy between Michael Matthews and Simon Gerrans. What's your view on that one?
Well, firstly, on Direct Energy, it's a great thing from both sides, from Brian Coquard saying, I have the confidence that I can win, so I don't want you to go in the breakaway. I need you with me. I'm relying on you because I have the confidence in myself. And Chavanel, the experienced rider, who can almost, if he wants in the team, say, I'm going to do what I want to do. He said, all right, I will stay with you because I have confidence in you. So it's great to see Coquard rating himself high enough to say it, and then Chavanel having the confidence in him and help build his confidence even further to what I see as a great result. And had Coquard not come across and bumped into Marcel Kittel, for mine, he would have won the stage because he got in front as he hit shoulders, but then as they hit elbows, it just put him off balance, and he really had no throw at the line. Compare it to his lunge for the line the day before where he held off Peter Sagan for third in Angers. He had nothing, and he lost by 2.8 centimetres. And because he was so off balance after bumping with Marcel Kittel, but that's all part of it. Sometimes you really don't have it completely under control. You've got to understand that they are so deep in the red zone, he would have been sprinting hardly able to see. So you do get a bit off balance, and a bit of bump and grind is all normal in the sprint, but it did cost him. Now on the other side, Orica Green Edge, two-pronged attack, but it failed on both fronts. We saw Matthews doing his own thing, Impey leading out Gerrans, and now Matthew White said the idea was for Gerrans and Impey to go long, try and make it a really long, dragged-out, tough sprint, but they couldn't get out. They were blocked in, so they didn't get to go early. If you've got a plan to go early, you make sure you can get out. You make sure you've got room. You've got to manoeuvre yourself into a position where maybe Impey's catching a bit more wind for longer, but make sure you can get out and you don't get closed in. In the end, Matthews tried to go in the sprint, but started to fade, and in the end, crash. So let's see what's going on here first.
There is Daryl Impey from the Orica Bike Exchange team, just collecting a fresh bitten. That's from the birthday boy, Christopher Juhl Jensen. And it is the Direct Energy team that have been caught up in this little incident.
Also Jasper Stove in there in the mountains classification jersey, a couple of riders from Lampre, and one of the riders, I think might be Robert Wagner there from Lotto NL Jumbo, Arashiro there.
And that was Chavanel that was involved in that fall, the man that we were just talking about. Arashiro getting the bike organised here. We wait to see whether it's Rui Costa. No, it's not Rui Costa that is with them. It's Louis Meintjes, and this young South African, he is a genuine chance for a top 10 finish in this race. A genuine chance. So that's why the Lamprey riders were waiting. The leaders, it is Van Avermaet at the front, followed by Grivko, and then De Gent. 3 kilometres to the sprint. 1 kilometre to the King of the Mountains prize. That's not fair, is it, Robbie?
Ouch. I think it's just going to be a long, draining day for the 6 chasers, because they won't see these 3 riders back again. Once you let Thomas De Gent go, it takes an almighty chase to bring him back, and I just don't think the firepower is there behind Greg Van Avermaet. He's rolled up the sleeves. Literally.
Summer has arrived. 1 kilometre to the sprint. Grivko back with the team car. I wonder if Alexander Vinokurov is in the team car, because when they went over this climb in 2011, they went the opposite direction. So down the way that they've just came up. And Vinokurov crashed out of the race that year. Jürgen Vandenbroek went off the side of the road with him, and he crashed out of the race. And there's a little bit of graffiti on the corner where Alexander Vinokurov crashed, and it just says, Vino out, and points to the corner.
And that was the crash where he hit a large boulder and broke his pelvis.
He did.
I think, by memory, he walked back up to the side of the road.
And then collapsed. For all the criticism, and it's justified a lot of it.
Whatever you say about Vino, okay, justified, but hard as nails. He was tough.
This is the intermediate sprint, and it looks as if Thomas De Gent wants to collect the intermediate prize once again. And Grivko sitting at the back, thinking about the small time bonus perhaps. Van Avermaet wants the time bonus. He's 18 seconds away from the yellow jersey. A 3-second time bonus for the first rider across. 2 seconds for the second rider. 1 second for third place. And every second could count for Greg Van Avermaet to get the yellow jersey by the close of play this afternoon. Van Avermaet across. Don't worry about the 20 points for green. It's a 3-second time bonus that he wants the most. He's only 15 seconds away from the yellow jersey by comparison to how it listed this morning, but he's 14 minutes and 18 seconds further up the road. He's on target.
I don't think he has to worry about the 3 seconds. It's a token thing. Yeah, I'm just getting some extra time. But so far in front, I don't see them losing more than 8 minutes of that lead. Probably will be about halved by the time they get to the finish.
I tend to agree.
There's nothing to gain from the GC riders by chasing it down to try and really narrow it down to 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. They'll be looking at each other. It's the first test for the climbers and the general classification contenders. They'll be looking at each other, looking for signs. Plenty will be looking at Alberto Contador to see how well he's recovering, because he said yesterday, I'm having some problems and some pain when I'm riding out of the saddle. So there'll be eyes on him, but all eyes on each other and marking each other. But one thing they will do, I think, is race very hard to the top of the final Category 3 climb. I drove down the descent on the way in here to the finish. It's about 1 car wide, not more. Off camber corners, 2 very sharp hairpins, dodgy road surface at best. They're all going to want to start at the front to stay out of trouble and not get taken out by someone else, particularly those who don't trust their descending skills so much.
500 metres to the intermediate sprint for the chasing group of 6. And Rafael Micah leads them through at the moment. In terms of that race back in the main group, the reason so adamant and agreeing with you with the amount of time that they will lose is for the Tinkoff team. Now that it looks certain that Peter Sagan won't be able to defend the yellow jersey, they won't be amping the pace up at all, and they'll try and make this another relatively comfortable day for Alberto Contador. The slower it is in the main peloton, the happier Alberto Contador will be. Roman Sikar is the rider from Direct Energy that now goes through to the front. One of the teammates of Brian Cocker, who finished in 2nd place yesterday. Former under-23 world champion Roman Sikar, and he won that title in 2009 in Mendrisio, the same year that Kidal Evans won the elite men's road race. It is warm. Cyril Goutier's got the jersey unzipped, and he doesn't have an undershirt on. It's the first day up into the 20s. 4th in the intermediate sprint, Serge Pauls goes across to collect the points.
Peter Sagan not overly concerned about the points there, just nipping a couple of points. I think he's staying behind Cavendish, I thought. So Cavendish may be taking back a point on Peter Sagan, possibly 2. But Peter Sagan knows his advantage comes when the race gets hilly. All the sprinters get dropped early, and he just cruises on through, quite often in the breakaway, and takes another 20 points at the intermediate. So no panic there from Peter Sagan.
But Brian Cocker is 70 points behind Peter Sagan in the race for the green jersey.
I think it was a sprint of a bit of getting rid of some frustration and proving a bit of a point. As we see here, some multicoloured agricultural art. We've got 10 tractors making up our wheels, and the black hay bales wrapped up. Nice touch. Black handlebar tape, black saddle, black bidden as well. Nice matching.
Dan Martin before this stage was one of the favourites, the Irishman riding for the edX Quickstep team. So too was one of his teammates, Julien Alaphilippe. It was his other teammate, Marcel Kittel, who won yesterday. We caught up with Dan Martin before today's stage got underway. Unfortunately for Dan, though, the prospect of the stage win is slipping through the fingers for edX Quickstep. Here is Dan Martin.
The role as the next man from Team BMC, and I suppose the interesting thing is, and I actually had kind of forgotten that the owner of Team BMC, Phil, his hometown of Andy Rees is in Bern, and we go there in the last week of the race.
What an occasion that would be. Andy is a very nice person indeed.
It's a problem. That looks like Pinot. It looked like Thibaut Pinot.
Yeah.
I didn't hear it on the radio, but he stopped very rapidly.
I have to rely on recognition there, but it looked like him, his style, the way he was standing. Let's hope not, because these boys are in serious mood now.
Well, I tell you what as well, Phil, it's also at this part of the race going to be very difficult to get back in, because this now is a question of Team Movistar, which has been the winner of the World Tour team, the World Tour over the last 3 years, one of the dominant teams on...
I think they're calling it. They're saying he crashed. But they haven't given us his name. See, that's the problem, Paul, now. Even our race radio and all the mechanics are split because the peloton is split. They can't catch up the riders.
Well, that's the big problem. The team cars could be an awful long way back, and that was the problem that happened to Richie Porter just a couple of days ago, because there was a climb just before the finishing climb, and the team cars were stuck behind riders who were being dropped, and they weren't allowed to come by. They were held back by the referees. So that rider who had that mechanic, I'm pretty sure, Phil, that was Thibaut Pinot. He's going to have to get a wheel from the neutral service vehicle and try and scramble back in.
Well, we'll find out when we can. They haven't called his race number is 121. They call the numbers in French, of course, 121. But they haven't said anything. They're talking again. They haven't mentioned it. But they're talking about those three riders are still continuing with a very hefty lead. It is such a difficult run-in now, and of course this is why the main peloton have been very protective of, respectful rather, of the route today. After this one is over, we go on to another second category mountain, then we go to a third category, which is actually very hard, and then we come to the finishing line.
Well, we come to the finishing line with a very nasty, tricky little 2.5 kilometre descent with a number of nasty little hairpins. Just back there, I'm sure plenty of the geologists who would be very happy to see that little puy we could just spot there. And the puys are basically plugs of extinct volcanoes. And as you said earlier, there are so many of them in this part of the world. It must have been quite interesting 6.5 to 13 million years ago.
We're looking at Serge Powell's in the white jersey. On the right side, Cyril Gocho. He's the man that's probably got my room in the hotel tonight, which we vacated this morning. He's staying there this evening. And also Rafał Majka, champion of Poland of just over a week now, and a good climber.
Well, again, here we go. We're looking here at Team Movistar, and it was a tough choice this year because they were looking for one of their men for the flatlands, Alex Dowsett, and unfortunately for him, it was right down to the last minute. Oh, Andre Grivko now in that Astana jersey. He's finding this gradient just a little bit too much. This is, as I said, the steepest part of the climb, the Puy-Marie. Oh, that hurts. He's a great time trialist. He's been 4 times champion of the Ukraine in the individual time trial, but here he really has paid for the effort of being in this group. So as I mentioned, this is the steep part. We're looking at 11.3, 11.9, 11.9% for the final 3 kilometres. A little bit further back, just sitting at the back end of the group all the time. And I have a feeling that the man we're looking at there, Daniel Tekla-Heimanot, he's conserving energy to hopefully do something a little bit further down the road once we get into the mountains. Bernard Vermaat on the left-hand side. He's not one of the great climbers, but I just think that the form that he's got this year coming into the Tour de France, slipping away now, Fabien Cancellara riding his last Tour de France.
Well, it looks like 1 or 2 more are in difficulty now at the back. Steve Cummings, 104, has gone with Daniel Tekla-Heimanot. Also, Fabien Cancellara losing ground too. We're getting up into the heavens up here now. This is the highest point of this pass as we climb up to the top of the Puy-Marie. The next one that we climb is a little bit sharper, but doesn't go quite as high.
Now, the problem is the last 3 kilometres are where this climber really becomes its worst at average gradients, averaging there between 11.5% and 12%. It really is quite a beast of a climb. They're narrow roads as well, and once you get over the top of this, you've got a pretty tricky descent down into the outskirts of the final climb of the day, the Col de Pertus, which is ranked also at 2nd category.
So goodbye Andre Grivko now. These 2 riders left free to fly for a jersey each in the Tour de France tonight. Polka dot for De Gent, yellow for Van Avermaet. Be a first for both of them.
Yep, it will, and there's a big number of riders, though, Phil, now starting to pay the pressure of the tempo that is being dictated in the main field by Team Movistar. One by one, plenty of riders moving away. Just spotted Ian Stannard, one of the riders from Team Sky. He's not one of the great climbers. He's one of the riders who is expected to do the pacemaking on the flat. But even now in the group in the middle, a lot of riders starting to get eliminated. We're now down to 4 chasers, while the 3 leaders are a kilometre away from, the 2 leaders are a kilometre away from the summit.
Sikar, Vachon, the last 2 riders we saw there being dropped by that chase group. This just shows you the pressure here. And remember, this is the first time the Tour's encountered the climbs this year. And their legs do strange things. Tony Galopin, we fancied him today. He's also being dropped from the group right now.
Well, it's just the indication. I think I just spotted Adam Hansen. Yeah, that's Adam Hansen as well, slipping away. This is kind of a reference, Phil, for us to understand how difficult and how great a job Movistar are doing. I think we're going to see a massive battle. Let's not forget, we're not even at the end of the first week of the Tour de France. There's 3 weeks of racing to go, and everybody's said it's all about the final week.
These 2 there just going off the back for Cannondale, Drapak from the USA. as they continue to slip away here. Thomas Vauclair also going backwards now, saving themselves for another day.
Tom Dumoulin.
Yeah, now that's a surprise.
A lot of people were saying maybe this could be the day for Tom Dumoulin, but look at the crowd here at the top of this climb.
And this to take the lead in the King of the Mountains for Thomas de Gent, and there's no resistance from Greg van Avermaet.
Well, now, Phil, they've gone over the top of the climb, and as we've seen on the ascent up here, well, this is what it was like on the ascent. Narrow roads. It's a very tricky, difficult descent as we start to go down the other side with one or two nasty little corners. And, of course, bear in mind that we got reports a little bit earlier on from Steve Perino, who's on the motorbike, that the roads are melting, and we know what happens when that happens. It makes it very tricky around the corners.
Now this is serious stuff from Movistar. Now there's Nairo Quintana himself on the left side of our picture.
Over on the right-hand side, the two riders riding together, the two leaders of Team BMC. Well, all of a sudden, the overall leader, Peter Sagan, in difficulty.
Yes, these hills were too steep for Peter. He's no inspiration now because he knows the yellow is off his shoulders tonight. But we'll be talking about him all the way to Paris, but not today.
Well, a lot of people have questioned why do you think that Peter Sagan does not know his limits in the sport. Well, over the last few years, he's bulked up quite a lot. He's become extremely powerful in the sprint. He's a punchy rider. But I always wonder in the back of my mind, Phil, if he slimmed off for 5 or 6 kilos, could he actually be a Tour de France contender? But for him, I think he just enjoys his life and enjoys his racing too much.
This is Nibali here.
Wow.
This is Nibali, the man that won the Giro d'Italia, has now made it quite clear he's not trying to win and do the double here with the Tour de France. He's always said he's here to help his teammate Fabio Aru, and I guess this proves a point.
Well, I tell you what, that does not help Fabio Aru when you've got your conscience getting dropped on a climb like this. Fabio Aru being left alone. But what it does say now, Phil, we are having the foundations laid for a head-to-head between two great teams. Team Movistar from Spain. Look at the faces on these riders from Spain now. They're doing everything they can to reduce that gap, and what a gap it is, because at the end of the day, if they do something phenomenal here this afternoon, it's down to 7.5 minutes. Alejandro Valverde could be in the yellow jersey if they can pull it all back in the last 30 kilometers or 18 miles of the race.
Now, I kind of expected this because this is Rafael Majka, the best climber of what's left of the chase. He's going to try and leave these guys now and go third on the road if he can catch up with Grifko. And it looks there is a reaction from Serge Powell, who will go downhill the other side pretty quickly if he can control Majka making the move. Majka goes over the top in 4th place.
Yes, but the gap, Phil, you've got to read the clock. 2 3/4 minutes is the difference between these riders and the two leaders.
Oh yeah, I'm not thinking he'll catch up. I think he'll just get rid of the others, that's all. Oh, let's go downhill.
Yes, now, when I talk about a technical descent, that's what the riders are lining themselves up for. Well, now, all of a sudden, the man who has been the animator of the opening 4 stages of the Tour de France, here he is, Peter Sagan. He has been undefeated since he started riding the Tour de France when it comes to winning the green jersey points competition. In his first Tour de France, well, that went right the way back to 2012. And ever since then, all the way through, he's been the winner on the Champs-Élysées of the green jersey points competition. And that's a competition that at the moment he is still leading. But at the moment, it looks very much as if the yellow jersey is being relinquished. Look at this. This, in fact, is already putting a little bit of a signal down to Team Sky saying, hey, we are here for Nairo Quintana. We will do everything we can. But it's nice to see Richie Porte, you know, everybody was concerned that Richie Porte would no longer be the dual leader of Team BMC. But you've got to be sensible about this. You know, it's only the first week of the Tour de France, and Richie Porte, yes, he lost 1 3/4 minutes, but all of a sudden, with a ride like this today, he's going to start to climb right up again in the overall classification.
And that's what he wants, to boost his morale. Richie does get a little bit affected by situations out there on the road, and he has to be brought round to think positive, because there's no doubt about his talent, the boy from Tasmania. Slovenia. And he's going to feel pretty strong today. Frank Schleck, as we just heard him on the radio, just passing through our picture, has now been dropped from the group. Kirienka's just gone for Sky. Oh, it's hurting a lot of riders now.
Yeah, but what's maybe more important is Team Movistar are hurting Team Sky at a point like this. Look at this, another rider from Team Sky slipping up, Mikel Landa.
I'm surprised at that, Paul.
Well, this is like a psychological slap in the face from Team Movistar. They are proving why we've always talked about Phil. We've talked about them going back to the days of Pedro Delgado, Miguel Indurain as being the team for the mountains. And they know that the last week of this Tour de France is all about mountains.
Today, the Tour de France has changed its face for the first time since we started the event. The leaders are testing each other. They're going to have to play subservient to a new leader tonight. And we're seeing Sepulveda's just gone. The rider was disqualified last year, but he's a very talented rider. And he really wasn't trying to cheat. He didn't see anything wrong with the situation. He's an Argentinian. Sky are living with their leaders. TJ Vanguard and BMC are still there. It's going to be very decisive. Every second counts, and there's 2 more climbs to come before we climb up to the finish.
Thank you very much for reminding me of that there are still 2 climbs to go, but there's also a dodgy, tricky descent there. Number 1 to, oh, there's a little acceleration, little dig at the top here.
I just saw Adam Yates too, the Orica Bike Exchange rider, look to be hanging on at the back.
Well, sorry about the excitement there. It wasn't an acceleration. Richie Port saw somebody at the side of the road. He, more than anybody else, knows how important it is to eat at times like this. In fact, when he was riding for Team Sky a couple of years ago, Alaphilippe also struggling here. As I mentioned a little earlier, this is the first time that the Tour de France has had heat. We're creeping up to around about 30 degrees Celsius. Over the top of the climb, it would be a bit cooler there. You can just see that's Adam Yates just towards the back end of the group. He's starting to pay as well for a little bit of the pain in this leading group, but there's not many riders left.
Heading up the mountain now, and it's Movistar has hurt so many riders in this race now. The gap is inside 7 minutes, 15 miles, 24 kilometers to go. They can't catch those leaders, can they?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil, as we go over, it's all of a sudden come from 15 minutes, Phil, around about 10 kilometers ago, down to 7 minutes. Bear in mind, just having a quick look over the top of the helmet there, that's Peter Sagan. You can see he's not enjoyed this mountain, one mountain too far. But I mean, you've got to imagine he's a big guy. He's almost 6 foot, and you look at the way he's built. He's built almost built like a boxer. This is power we're looking at, and that's the disadvantage he has. He's dragging those extra pounds over the top of this mountain.
But it tells us how much effort this man has put in to keeping that yellow jersey. He'll remain as popular as ever. First 4 riders behind those 2 leaders. Micah has been joined by 3 others after the climb.
Well, just to throw a few stats in there, Phil, you know I normally always work on that 1 kilometer for 1 minute for 10 kilometers. Well, in 14 kilometers there, the main field slashed 4 minutes off the advantage of the 2 leaders. So it could really go down to the final climb of the day. We could see a massive big turnaround.
And though 4 minutes would mean they'd lose by 2:56.
Nibali here. He's just cruising down this descent.
I wonder if there's a story here. Nibali dropping from that group, a very select group of around 25, 26 riders. Here, the brakes.
Tony Martin.
He's a good descender.
He's also, but he was looking over his shoulder, so I wonder if he was just checking to see if he had one of his teammates in difficulty who needed pacing back. Now this is a little bit more interesting as we look at the speeds now. We're starting to get, as the road straightens out, look at that. Craig van Avermaet, 42 miles an hour he did just a few moments ago. So we're getting into the tricky part of the descent where you've got to back off your brakes.
They'll love to see that. 20 kilometers to go. At 14 kilometers to go, they'll be at the top of the next col, the Col de Pertuis, and then we move on to the last climb and the finish.
So the 2 leaders, they now know that they've got 1 more climb. And it's a nasty little climb. In fact, they've got two climbs. The last one, the Col de Fond de Serre, that's around about 3 kilometers long and an average of 5.5%. And although it is only given us 6 to 6.5%, driving up it in the car, I thought it was a much more difficult climb than that. This is the penultimate climb that they will line themselves up for, the Col de Pertuis. And that's a climb of around about 4.5 kilometers, average gradient 8%. But again, as they get up towards the top, it's 11%, and that's where the team of the climbers, Team Movistar, will have the advantage. Here is the profile. As you can see, Mondaille, that's where they start, and they start to climb up. The black sections are sections in excess of 10%, and as you can see, just to make it a little more difficult, the big long black section is right towards the top of the climb. The four men in no man's land. The last time check we got to them was around about 3 minutes behind the two leaders. De Gent doing a great operation here this afternoon. He's got himself a lot of points in the King of the Mountains competition. Now here is the start of the next climb of the day. The penultimate climb for these riders, the Col de Pertuis.
Contador has rejoined the main group, which is stretched to about 27 riders now, but he looks the way he's steering his bike down the mountains. He's suffering from the pain on his right side. Remember, in 2 days he fell twice on that same side of his body. Let's hope he's okay. These are the four chasers now. In front there are 3 riders in groups of 2 and 1. As far as I know, Grifko is lost in no man's land. We've run out of cameras now to show you all the pictures. Listen to the crowd.
Well, this climb, Phil, when you start to look at the average gradient, is very nasty indeed, and it's the last 2 kilometers when it starts to really leap up to 10 and 11%, and it was in that steep gradient on the previous climb that the two leaders lost huge chunks of time to Team Movistar.
It's a long time since we've commentated on 2 Belgian cyclists in the front of a stage of the Tour de France. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. Eddy Merckx spoiled it for the Belgian folk when he dominated the Tour de France, winning it 5 times. And then we had the great climbing prowess of Lucien Van Impe. And now we've got 2 riders up front, and they're looking good to stay away for the day.
Yeah, I just had Jens Voigt pop in there, Phil, to just to remind me.
Yeah, I saw him. What did he say? Tell me.
I always talk about the 1 kilometer for the 1 minute for 10 kilometers on the flat. But he said on a day like today, after a hard stage, when these guys are starting to tire, they can look to lose a minute per kilometer on the climb. So it's really going to be dodgy. A while back we said these guys are going to win. It's all done and dusted. But when you look at the speed, when we get a chance to go back and see Team Movistar a little later on,
formula works, they'll be caught and dropped by 6 minutes.
Well, that could be this. It all depends on how much firepower Movistar have got left,
or who they're trying to damage. I mean, they might not be unhappy if these two dominate the day for a couple of days. They want to close the gap, though.
Yeah, but then it becomes complicated because their leader, even though their leader for the Tour de France is Nairo Quintana, the man every rider on Movistar respects is Alejandro Valverde. He said that he's just going to help Quintana do as best as he can in this race. But for Valverde, there's a chance of a stage victory today. It's an ideal stage victory for Alejandro Valverde. And let's not forget, the other day when we went up towards Cherbourg at the end of stage 2, he was looking for the victory. He's got the form, so he would obviously be looking for a stage victory in the early part of the Tour de France, and why not a little bonus of a yellow jersey as well. Alaphilippe, well, he's in that next group at 3, and he is at 6 minutes and 50 seconds. He is the best placed rider in the overall standings in that group, because Peter Sagan has been left behind, but he only has a 2-second advantage over Alejandro Valverde. Movistar going for it.
Well, look at this, Paul. This is like a sprint finish on the top of a mountain, because Movistar are having none of this. Sky's getting in amongst it. TJ Van Garden's BMC team are here. This is absolutely fantastic bike racing. And they're just trying to hurt each other as well as reduce that lead by Greg Van Avermaet.
Well, this is a day when we expected to see a little bit of separation between some of the major contenders, but I think that this day is doing a bit of serious damage, because that team Movistar, Phil, first of all, they've started to come out to say, we are the team that are going to challenge Sky. This is what you've got to put your seatbelt on going down a descent like this, because this gives you an indication. We're looking at speeds 45 miles an hour down here, but I'm just thinking about Movistar as we look a little bit further towards the back of this group. Yes, they have come here to look after their man Nairo Quintana, but the man who has been the lead of that team for years is Alejandro Valverde, and he's probably thinking 1 minute for every kilometre. I could win the stage and the jersey.
Well, it's De Gent doing all of the climbing. Van Avermaet is not the climber. He's a strong cyclist, but not the climber. And just to prove me totally wrong, he's just attacked. Can you believe that? He's going to test De Gent here and try and go. He needs to get away, I suppose. He feels that way. If he gets to the top of the climb, De Gent will still lead in the mountains, but there's still one smaller climb to come before the finish. Well, no love lost between the two Belgians.
Well, I did tell you, Phil, that coming into this race, we're looking at a man who broke his collarbone in the Tour of Flanders earlier in the year. Watch this move here. He could feel at this point, you know, you have an instinct sometime as a professional rider that you feel the moments to attack. He knows there's 17 kilometres, 10 miles to go to the finish, and now he's made his move.
And he attacked in front of the home flag of Flanders there, that black line on a yellow background. Now it's up to Thomas De Gent. He'll have to take a few risks on the way down. We've got some very, very dodgy descents to come here.
Van Avermaet, as I was just starting to say before he attacked, Phil, he had that accident in the Tour of Flanders in April. He broke his collarbone, but he's fought back. He had great form in the National Championships, where really he helped his teammate Philippe Gilbert to win a second title. But that gave me the indication he was coming into the Tour de France on the top of his form. And this kind of course today, if you're in great form, and even if you're not a magical climber, you can use your power to survive on these kind of slopes.
Future, but you know, he's in his first Tour de France and he must be wondering, I beat these guys every week when I ride. Now I'm in the Tour de France, they're putting me under this sort of pressure. It's a very, very different bike race.
You mentioned it's his first Tour de France, Phil. It's also, I think, his first Grand Tour as well, his first Grand Tour participation.
Yeah.
He's learning by jumping into the deep end.
And he's proving he's a champion because he's hurting and he's hanging.
You know, funny.
Contador on the back there, Paul. You see him dancing around on those pedals there, the Tinkoff team. He's hurting.
There's Dan Martin over on the left-hand side in the blue and black jersey of Ethics Quickstep. What a changed rider he seems to be now that he's switched across to this team Ethics Quickstep, which we've always regarded as being one of the top teams in the world.
Daniel Moreno is the rider from Movistar at the back. He's been working hard, but now he's been put back in his place there. Having a quick shower alongside him was Adam Yates as well, Orica Bike Exchange. This is the maximum gradient, 11% for this ride. Oh, it's hurting, but he's just going to see yellow. Look, the gap is just come inside 6 minutes. There's only 9 miles left to ride, 15 kilometres, and here he comes now. He could have the double here as he's building more points, maximum points over the top, 5 for him.
Well, it now looks like they're starting to pull back riders one at a time. That's Romain Sicard just over on the left-hand side in the black and yellow jersey. He was in that early group of 9 riders. And isn't it funny how a few moments ago it looked as if Movistar were all in control. But now, once it's come to the crucial part of this stage, they've mustered the troops for Team Sky, and they are now dominating the pacemaking behind the leader.
Well, it's very hard trying to do calculations as well as commentate on the Tour de France when it's a split like this. But if the next sprint, the next climb is won also by De Gent, I think he'd be equal on points by Avermaet. He'd be equal on points with De Gent. And in effect, because he's won the last climb of the day, he would lead the King of the Mountains as well as have yellow.
Well, I think for him, more importantly, is the yellow jersey. As again, you can see, these roads are really quite treacherous. You've got to be very careful as he picks his way around that corner.
15 to go for Micah and the Huzarski. Two Polish riders here. And Huzarski's hurting a bit. This is the tough man. 3 times ridden in the Tour de France. 1 time the King of the Mountains. 3 times a stage winner.
Well, the speed that gap was starting to come down seems to have switched off. It really got slashed down to the 6-minute margin. Now it seems to have stabilized out again. And I think that's because Team Sky have said, OK, well, we're quite happy with the situation. They'd be quite happy to allow a guy like Greg van Avermaet to have a 4 or 5 minute lead in the overall standings. But just watch the way he goes down this descent. He's reading the corners as he goes into them.
Oh, I was coming up to a good corner there, but our cameras, of which we have no control, has gone back to Micah on the way up. And he really is hurting his countryman here, but he's hanging in, Bartosz Huzarski. I think the fact that they're not closing in now, they've made their play. They've weakened a lot of stars in that back group, but the big stars like TJ Van Garderen, Chris Froome, Fabio Aru, and of course Contador is still there too.
Well, Mikel Nieve is the rider on the front for Team Sky, followed by the rider from Wales, Geraint Thomas, with his jersey wide open there in 3rd position.
Little Enau in 2nd wheel. We're picking them back. This is Vachon coming from the breakaway. Oh, those legs. He's just about going to make the top here. It's going to be a long ride home, even if it is only 7 miles.
Yeah, Sergio now looking very comfortable as Rafael Micah. He's also picking up a few points, Phil, in these high-ranked 2nd category King of the Mountains back with the lone leader now. Now, this man, Greg van Avermaet, will be starting to dream not only